be a sponge, and then bring the juice.
By focusing on your improvement, by focusing on your progress, and eliminating any fixed mindset that you may have and acts of perfectionism, then you encourage your own mastery.
On some level, we do what we want to do 24 hours a day. Now, sometimes it may not seem like that, but if I'm choosing to work instead of sleep, what I'm actually saying is keeping my job is more important than sleeping.
I'm tired of this. I'm tired of getting beat. What can I do to get over this hump? So mentally, that's when I kind of put that forefront, like, hey, it's either all or nothing.
I like to put failure in quotations because I don't believe that failure is true failure if you're looking at it with the right mindset.
The truth is, the journey to greatness is hard. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes focus, and every day you have to decide what you value, what you want to pursue, and what you want to achieve. And if you dig deep enough, if you push hard enough, we all have what it takes to be great. Welcome to the Edge of Greatness. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, performance coach and author, Jason, call me Coach Jay Fry. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. What a blast we are going to have. Super excited. Hopefully we can bring as much energy as you've brought in the past. So
yeah,
really
absolutely. Absolutely. So I got to start off with this. I'm curious. I got to know, how's the hiatus on the coffee going in your house since your wife has given it up for Lent?
Hey, let me tell you, I'm making up for it right now. So I'm still making a full pot and she's not drinking it. So that means that I get to, but there are lots of eyeballs like the ones that I had in that picture. So, that's happening a lot.
No, yeah, I can only imagine the lack of caffeine on our end would just, I don't know if it would fly around here. So, so first thing here, let's start with, I noticed that you and a lot of people are preaching this get up early, 5 a.m. club, all this early morning talk. I myself, I was up at 4:15 this morning, getting ready to go to work and do some stuff with some clients. I saw you two were up before the sun. What does that practice do for you?
Well, first off, I preach it and it works for me. And I also recognize that there are some people that are 2 p.m.ers. Like that's the time that works best for their strength and conditioning work. That's the time that works best for their energy. So I do it for me. All right. And so when I'm preaching this, I recognize that there's grace, that there's understanding that some people do it because of when their best vibes are. And so it's a real understanding of what they do. I love waking up early. It's always kind of been, when I was in high school, we grew up and we hooped at 5:45. Like that's the time we started to hoop at. And, so it's been ingrained almost that I want to do stuff before the sun. And so we're just going to continue to do that because I love doing it. The house is quiet and, I don't have to worry about anything except for what I need to get done.
So do you think that it's more finding your personal rhythm to things that's going to better make those times work for you?
Charles, you hit it on the head. I hate it when people talk about balance because there's no actual balance. You give something here and that means something else drops, right? So my man Greg White talks about is just finding this rhythm that you can go. So it really is just finding your best rhythm for when you can wake up, when you can eat, when you can exercise. So it's all about rhythm.
That makes sense. I like that. Tell me a little bit about the mindful minute. I find those to be very interesting, and I'm curious as to where that came from and what's the thought process behind those.
Man, I want to be better. And so all these mindful minutes have nothing to do with other people. And to be honest, Charles, it has nothing to do with you or the other listeners. It has everything to do with me. Like these are the things that I struggle with, right? So if it's something that I'm learning, I want somebody else to know it because I know that chances are there are a lot more people like me. And so if they do enjoy it, man, that's what I am so happy But a lot of times those are just things basically that I can go back at the end of the day and look at and go back and go, I spoke about that in the mindful minute. That's what I need to continue to do. So it's basically a piece of a journal for me that I can always go back, because it's always going to get published. It's always going to get out there, so that I can always go back and learn and remember and hopefully continue to practice this.
Do you feel like it helps you become more accountable?
Yes. Yeah. Because a lot of people can call me out. You know, when you put stuff out in public, you put it out in public. So now it's, I better do it. I got to follow through with it, or then it doesn't work, you know? So I do think that there's a major amount of accountability that I'm placing just because I'm putting it out there.
I like that. I like that. So as somebody who's a coach and somebody who's constantly working on themselves, with the mindful minute stuff being for you and that journaling and that aspect of things, what I want to know is, as a coach, because you're always helping people, where do you turn when you need help?
Hey, one of the best things that I do, it is the best thing, hands down. Okay, so I'll give a couple pointers. But the first thing, the hands down best thing, is when I drive, I'm either doing a podcast where I'm listening to my man Marsh Bice, or Levinson, or Ferraro, or one of my favorites, Brett McCabe. I'm listening to those guys so that I can learn and get better, and once again help others. And if I don't have that on, the music is off, and I've got Jesus riding shotgun. So I'm talking and praying all the time when I'm in the truck. So I try not to put all this other, like if doubts come in, boom, turn that crap off. Let's talk. I want to give that up. I don't want to have those. So it is one of those things that I'm doing that. Other than that, it's the podcast where I'm constantly learning to help, to serve, to give, to lead in different ways.
So when it comes to the coaching aspect of things, is it more you're trying to absorb, or is there anybody or anything that you have in your life that you reach out to and like have conversations with? They kind of shout back at you. They give you maybe a little bit tougher direction when you're working on through things.
Yes, absolutely. I've got quite a few, and same thing. I put it on my blog about my inner circle. So I've got those people within my inner circle that I am always reaching out to. I called McCabe the other day in hopes that I could figure out, you know, I was having this issue within my Healthy Leader community that I wanted to see improved. What about, you know, I wanted to pick his brain and see, gives it to me. There's a lot of people that give me sharp criticism. My wife she's the best thing for me. You know, she gives me that criticism, and she's basically the critiquer, right? So she's not afraid of how I feel necessarily. She's just going to shoot it straight. And everybody needs that critiquer within their circle. They need somebody who is willing to do that, who cares about your feelings. But when they give you this feedback, it's not a caring of the feelings. And so it's just this understanding, you love me, so you're going to give it to me how I need it. And a lot of people, they shy away from that when somebody does give it to them. And that's typically because they don't have the trust factor, right? They don't have that relationship, so to speak, to be able to give and receive the feedback.
I like that. I actually was talking this weekend with a softball team, and I talked about being coached, and that is an important part of getting to the level of excellence that you're trying to achieve. And, you know, the feedback and the critiquing and the criticism and all those things are important. But I wonder, how do you help people receive those hard coaching moments? What's your tactic in that?
Beautiful. Well, number one, like we can all talk about it, and all the coaches say that, hey, I can't teach them. I can't coach them. They put up this wall. Well, what are we giving outside of practice to them? How much is it about the relationship? So one of the things that I suggest all coaches do, because most coaches have more than one coach on their staff, right? They've got other people. It's dividing your team up. Okay, so we divide the team up. Let's say there's 4 coaches. That means in a basketball sense, you might have 4 players per coach. Okay. If it's a baseball team, let's say 25 guys, and now there's 6 per coach, right? Or however we want to break it up. So we break it up, and throughout the week, we spend time watching those 6. So coach 1 watches A, B, C, D, E, and coach 2 is watching his select people for the entire week. So they are basically in charge of getting the feeling, getting the vibes, getting the energy from this kid. And then at the end of the week, you have a sit down with that group, that coach, that group. And so you talk about things that you saw, you talk about things that are happening in their lives. And this might only be a 10-minute, 15-minute conversation, but it's one of the best values you can get from your team in terms of building up rapport within the players. And then on Monday, the coaches all get together and they talk about it. And this might be the Monday before. So you might go 2 weeks or you might go 1 week with that group. And then on that Monday before, coach gets a new group, everybody gets a new group, but they talk about what happened in that last week. Hey, you better watch out for Johnny, just broke up with his girlfriend. So you might have to switch how you talk to him. You might have to get rid of that sarcasm that you use all the time, right? So it's just different things. And so now coach is aware of that and he might talk to Johnny in a different way. Johnny receives it. So it's one of the best ways so that you can give and receive feedback from the kids while building up this trust. So then when shit hits the fan, when it does, now you've got this, like, I'm telling you because this is what we need as a unit. And the kid takes it and it's not a character attack. And so then the kid gives what he can. So I think that that's one of the pieces. And if you do that, let's say 16 weeks a semester, right? So now that's 4 times that you watch this kid for an entire week, just this group, and then you feed on it and feed on it and feed on it. And your coaching staff just develops this relationship. That's 16 times. And then you do it again for the second semester.
I love that for building rapport. I guess what I was wondering then is, what if you have a kid come to you and they're not a part of your team and they don't have a coaching staff that's as dedicated to building rapport, but they're giving hard feedback? How would you help that kid navigate the feedback waters when the relationship isn't really there?
I mean, that's a great question. And I think that that's really hard to receive it. You know, it's really hard for a kid to do it if they don't have trust. So, I mean, really, you're just tossing up something and hoping it sticks, because the kid's not going to do it, especially if it feels like a character or an attack, or coach doesn't know me that well. How can I receive that? You know, so that's really difficult. I don't have much thing other than we need to develop the relationship first.
Do you think the player can initiate that development? Is that something that?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I mean, we all say that they can, or it's up to them, or whatever it is. It is not up to the player. It is up to the coach to do everything he can to win that player over. And it's something I've struggled with. I struggled with losing. I lost the job because I didn't develop a player in terms of the relationship, so that player could come to me and say, hey, I wasn't comfortable with this, with how you worded this. Like, and so it hurts me, that not because I lost the job, because I didn't gain that relationship with the player, you know? And so it was the best teaching point, is the best experience for me to go, okay, look, how do I do that for every single member of the team? It is on the leader, not the team.
I love that you used it as a learning opportunity, because I think too often we see failures and moments where we don't succeed as the end all be all to the situation. How do you navigate failure in your life?
All the time. How about that? I mean, anytime you're married, you're navigating failure. I think it's something that's practiced. It's something that's understanding. And, you know, from an education standpoint and a coaching standpoint, when people understand that their failure is actually making them better, scientifically proven to help your learning process happen faster. Well, since knowing that, I know that now, all I want to do is almost fail. I want to try stuff and put stuff out there and see if it's going to work. I want to promote. And if something works on this end, then I want to keep going with it. But I don't know if I don't try it. I do know that if I try it and I suck at it, which is going to be the beginning of anything we try, that I understand that I've got to learn so many different things and different avenues and different methods and different tools in order to be really, really successful. But it takes failure to learn that. And so that's one of the hardest things for, well, even for an adult like us to do. That's one of the hardest things. Imagine that for a kid, we adults have experiences built up to where we understand that. Kids don't. They're not used to it. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know the communication styles to deal with it. So it's really difficult for them to do that. But it's something that we have to encourage. I think doing it as a coach all the time is setting them up almost for failure. If you put the shortest kids versus the tallest kids in a game of basketball, who's going to win? Well, it's predicated on the rules, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
If we're going to play inside the 3-point line, I think my bigs might win. If we're going to play a full court game, I think my guards might win. You know, so it's just understanding, okay, what are my rules? What am I playing within?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can adjust to how it is. So if I want to try to get people to lose, I want to get people to go, I got to get rid of this unfair. If I can get unfair out of vocabulary, that's not fair. It's unfair. If we can get that out of vocabulary, then we can increase failure, and then we can increase learning at a much faster rate.
I love the idea of putting people in positions where they might lose or they were behind the 8 ball in a sense. What are some other ways that you do to encourage stretching their abilities and being okay with failure in those moments? Because that's one of those situations where you put them in a situation and odds are you're going to fail. But what happens when it's not that situation and they still fail? What are some ways that you encourage them to stretch, be uncomfortable, and even in a fair contest when they lose, be able to adapt?
Yeah, great question. Charles, one of the things I would say is that they got to build their process first.
Okay.
Right? So everybody, I mean, McCabe talks about process. Every coach, Ben Newman's talking about process. Everybody's going to talk about process, but they don't talk about building it up first. I've got to build my process. So whatever it is, Ray Allen as the shooter, right? He built his process. He said, these 300 makes I got to make every single day. I got to focus on my footwork for the first 100. I got to focus on my form for the next 100. Then I got to focus on the whole shot, feeling great for 100 shots. That's just his process. So then after his process, if he has a bad day, he goes, I did my process. I did what it took today to build onto tomorrow. So it's that foundation. You can always go back to the foundations, the basics, however you want to call it. But it's that focus of let's do this first. So I help people create their processes, whatever it is, whatever sport it is, let's create this process so that we can own it. So then when we fail, it's okay. We can go back to why, and we can go, okay, is the process helping me within this period? And so hopefully they can basically go, look, I did what I needed to do to be successful today. And it's one of those things of putting A after B is that compounding interest, right? That's what we want them to have. And that's how it helps them improve and fail, because they know that once again, it's going to come back to they're failing because they're learning, and they're learning faster because they're failing.
I like that. I like that. So what does the word greatness mean to you?
Greatness. Oh, man, you know what? You say a word. I don't even have a word. I think greatness comes from doing the stuff that's lined up with your vision and your heart. If it doesn't line up with your heart, you're not going to achieve greatness, because there will be something missing. And if there's something missing, then it's not greatness. Okay? It's not greatness. Like these MJ, LeBron, Kobe, these guys are great because they legitimately stayed true to the things that they wanted to do, that they wanted to accomplish. They had nothing to do with all this outside crap. It had everything to do with where they wanted to go, what they wanted to do. And that's what I think greatness is. And I love watching greatness. I love watching Tom Brady. I love watching MJ, Serena, from an athletic standpoint. I love watching business leaders do amazing jobs. I love watching communicators speak in a way that you feel it. I love watching people be great at relationships and building relationships right in front of your faces. So I love watching greatness. And that's typically because those people are doing what is aligned with where their heart's going.
So with that in mind, what brings you joy?
Service.
Okay.
Knowing that I'm doing my best to help someone else. That's always been on my heart. That's something that God's given me to do. And I do think that there's always going to be a pivot. And so we have to be able to be within boundaries of going, okay, I have to pivot now, go. Instead of people holding on and going, I can't do it. We've got to be able to try it. We've got to be able to have this experience where, okay, I have to pivot no matter what. I believe it. If my heart's going a different way, I got to go in that way. And so that's where I'm at.
I like that. So I was listening to a couple of your mindful minutes, and I was reading some stuff when we were getting prep for this conversation. And I want to know, what does it mean to be more like water?
Yes, that's one of my favorites. Number one, I got to give all the credit to Bruce Lee, right? But I was actually doing research on water. Like that was where it came from. And so being more like water, right? If we are dehydrated, we're 25 to 35% less effective and have less energy. 25 to 30. So we're looking at a fourth to a third energy is wiped out just because of a lack of water, right? So what if we could be water? What if we could walk into a room and bring 33% more water to the room, more energy to the room, more life? Water is life, right? So that was one of the pieces. The second piece was it can be transferred. It's flexible. Water turns into a liquid, a solid, and a gas. That's what we want as leaders. That's what we want as business owners. That's what we want to be as people and examples, because that shows how flexible we can be. I want to be able to go, okay, it's not necessarily this way, right? I want to be somebody that goes, okay, well, we got to put the ball in the basket. That's all that matters. So now, how do we do that? It doesn't have to be white boy Hoosiers textbook form where it's got to be straight up, straight down. How do I teach this person to put the ball in the hole, right? So it's just being flexible allows you to see more opportunity and almost increase your creativity. And that's what I really think water is.
I love that. I think that's a really cool way of looking at things. And I love the energy idea, because I think that that's one of the big things that we can all do is how we show up can make a huge impact. I also heard you talking about shifting perspective. I thought that was an interesting thing. So what's a recent shift that you've made by having that internal look at yourself?
Oh, man. I do it every single day where I write down, if I could rewrite today, what would that look like? So it's the recent, and it is the shifting of perspective of now all of a sudden I might have said something to somebody that could have been better, that could have been worded a different way, like the player that I didn't have that relationship with. It allows me to legitimately go put myself in their shoes and go, what could I have done? And I think that that's helping me be what I do want to be. It's helping me become a better leader. It's helping me become a better servant. And it's helping me be able to be more willing to change my mind. And that right there is probably the biggest focus for me in terms of 21 or 22, outside of the promotion of what we're doing. I want to be able to change my mind. And I want to be able to find different ways to be flexible, or to be in a way where I can converse with somebody like my kid who might not believe a certain thing. And I'm like, how can you not believe this? That means that I'm not doing what I need to do. That's not me shifting my perspective and listening to their side.
I love that. You've mentioned a few times now, journaling, the video journals, which is the Mindful Minute. How much time throughout your day do you spend in reflection?
Well, it's in the car, because a lot of times I am praying, but I'm also trying to listen. And I think that a lot of times reflection is just listening. It's listening to your heart. It's listening to your mind. It's listening to the creator you believe in. And so I spend that time doing that. I spend my evenings, I make sure that I write. So I've got a dope journal. Okay. So we call it in the Healthy Leader, the dope journal. And that's the data of past experiences, right? So everything that's happened in the past, I want to write about it. And it came from the Marine Corps snipers. They have their own dope journal that they use that puts in all their calculations. Every shot that they've ever taken is in the dope journal. We're talking wind, we're talking about my spotter, what did my spotters, all that's in their journal. So if you ever speak with a sniper, you can say, hey, I want to see your dope journal, and they'll be able to supply it to you. So I do that at nighttime, but then I'm also trying to spend time in the morning like Marsh does. He's writing every single day. I want to write every single day, but I want to talk about kind of where I'm going and what am I aiming for? What's my target? And so I do that in the morning. So really I'm trying to reflect at least a minimum 3 times a day if I'm trying to do that. But I think that reflection is probably not done enough. I don't think 3 times is enough. I think that reflecting on every single conversation that you have with somebody provides immense value. I think that, like somebody actually asked me on LinkedIn, they said, what assessment do you suggest? I don't care what assessment I suggest. I think it should be simple. I think that we're not assessing after the assessment. Okay, so when you select on your assessment, hey, I'm a 9 out of 10 on this comment. Charles, why are you a 9 out of 10? What makes you select that answer? Is it you, or is it what you want other people to think of you? Is that truly your desire? Or is that the desire you want somebody else to go, that's what Charles is? So I think that it's really, really hard to reflect if you're not willing to do that. You've got to be able to see that. And it's just basically asking, what did I get from this? How could I improve this? So yeah, I think reflection, I want to reflect as often as possible, but I'm not good enough at it yet, and that's okay.
How would you coach somebody who's trying to be more reflexive in their life? Where would you tell them to start? How would you help them create that habit? Start on paper.
We're gonna write it down. If I was coaching, I think that would probably be part of our pre-practice routine, is just writing something down. I think that journaling got taught as, hey, that's the middle school girl thing. Journaling is the most powerful thing that we can do, because it causes us to be aware. It causes us to reflect on past experiences, present moments, relationships, decisions, and just become more aware. So when that decision comes up, you're ready. So that's why the dope journal, that's what we talk about. We're improving leaders by improving their health, because if they can reflect, their decisions stay here, and now they have the energy to be able to go do it faster. So writing would be the cue.
So start with the pen, write it down.
And just once, like, let's just talk about doing it once a day. Let's put a timer on, put that egg timer on 5 minutes, and let's go. Let's see what we can write down. And there's no right is out of the equation.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing, is that there's no rules. Like there's not a set amount that you have to do. There's no expectation. It's just what pops up, what comes out, what do you need, what's present in your mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of present, how important is being present when it comes to performance?
Obviously, extremely important. I don't think you can be present without preparation.
Okay.
Okay. So you have to have the prep work done beforehand, because otherwise you can't be present. It's really hard to be focused in the moment if the preparation is not there. So it comes back to the process. Let's go process, preparation, and performance, right? So I think that the most important thing is if you've done your process, if you've done the work to prepare, then you can be in the moment, because if you do screw up, everybody does. If you screw up, you immediately have this ability to get back into the moment, because everybody's fear is what at the high school and even college level, what's a fear after a mistake? What would you say?
Being taken out of the game, being in trouble, getting benched, something along those lines.
And then let's come back to it. Why does that bother you?
Oh, I want to play. I want to compete. I want to be out on the floor. I want to help my team.
You want your team. You talk to a high school kid, the number one fear is the fear of failure in front of peers, right? So if we get back to the process, if we get back to the preparation, then when we do screw up in the performance, that fear is negated. That fear is gone, because I immediately have the ability to go, okay, I messed up, now what? Instead of, I messed up, now I'm going to hear dad talk about it on the way home. Now my girlfriend won't give me the end of game kiss. Now whatever it is, right? So we have this fear of, oh, they're going to think I'm really bad. Well, what's that do? What's negative thinking do? The next one. So now the mistakes occur even faster. But if we stay focused, then the present allows us to get back to the present.
I like that. And you touched on something that I find it's a very important topic to me, because I think we end up hurting our kids more than helping them, is the parental feedback following a game. What's a suggestion you would give to a parent to give as far as feedback or post-game conversation? What would be something you would tell them?
Shut up. And that's for my parent. I'm learning, be quiet. Be quiet. Let's just, even if the car ride home is quiet, and typically the car ride home is quiet because we've already set that standard of the mistake first. Don't even bring up the game. Bring up, hey, how was your energy level? I'm really proud of you. You can bring up how they bounced back. You can bring up, hey, man, you brought so much energy to the bench by throwing up the threes, by doing whatever it takes. I noticed that. I am so proud of the way you did this, that, and the other. Pride has nothing to, our pride for our kid should have nothing to do with the performance, right? So I do think that to start with a parent who already has that issue is to start being quiet. And then just say, hey, look, I love you and I'm proud of you. I think that those are probably the most important words to say. I am proud of you. I love you. And you don't leave it at nothing else gets added. You don't say, but everybody knows, your kid messes up. And everybody at the gym knows that. Your kid knows that. You don't need to tell them. So it's one of those things, I want people to know, but what your kid doesn't know is that you're proud of them. What your kid doesn't know is that it brings joy to watch you do that, to watch you compete, to watch you go against somebody you don't know who's better than you, and you're competing. I love that, and I want to watch more of that. So I would just say, hey, look, if you're a parent who already starts like that, then let's start with practicing being quiet. If you're a parent who doesn't, say, I love you and I'm proud of you. If you're a parent who super shy and doesn't really know, my mom would clap when I got fouled, when I fouled somebody. Jason Fryer with the foul, number 34. She's like, ooh. No. And so it was one of those things I'd rather, ride home with her because she doesn't know. So it's almost like if you were a parent, act like you don't know the game of basketball. Act like you don't know the game of football. And then you can have great conversations with your kid.
I love that. I think that's such a valuable piece of information too, because I have a kid that I've coached before, and she was on my softball team, and she goes, you know what? I love my parents because they never get on me about how I perform because they don't know. And I think that's such a huge thing. And she's like, that's why I chose to play softball, because neither of them knows anything about the game. So they always go, you did so good today. And even if she's had a bad game or she didn't think she did good, and she can be hard on herself all she wants, but she knows it's never coming from them.
Yes.
It's never coming from the outside. And I think that's the big thing is, like you said, kids know when they mess up. They don't go out there and go, oh man, Hofer 4 today was what I was shooting for. That was perfect. That's not how it works. We understand as kids, whether we won or lost, whether we did well or not. So I think that speaks to a lot too, as far as making the game fun for our younger athletes. So what's some things that you do to balance between the focus aspect and preparation and the fun and joy of competing and going out there and playing? What are some things you do to help make it fun?
Oh man. Well, you know what is crazy is I think that if we can we'll piggyback right off of what we just talked about. I think that as coaches, we typically want to show people what we know, right? So that automatically means that we become negative mindset focused. We become, I want to point out what you did wrong. How about we flip the script? How about we point out what they did great? And it can be anything. So what does that get? More behaviors that get emphasized or talked about get like repeated, right? So if we want to reinforce the good things, what should we probably be doing? Catching them doing the great things, catching them doing it right. Not, hey, your back leg should be this when you throw. Well, that might be a teaching point for individual instruction and maybe a different time, but let's catch them. Man, your release was phenomenal. Well, which one would you rather have? Which one would you rather hear as somebody receiving this type of feedback? So I think that plays a major factor in making it more fun, because you're hearing a compliment, not the negative behavior. And then the other piece too is making it more fun. Fun is also subjective, right? So that's somebody's version of fun is winning. Somebody's version of fun is playing knockout. Somebody's version of fun is doing this, that, and the other. So I think it's kind of getting this idea of how can we make being a collective unit fun, because then the kids want to stay, right? So if you're constantly praising good things, the kid probably stays, and he might not even be as skilled. He stays in it longer. Well, what happens when kids stay in it longer? They get better, right? The average age is 8th grade for dropout level in terms of sports. After 8th grade, they drop it. 9th grade, they play because their friends did it. So you're getting that significant drop there. But then after 9th, like it's way, 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 way down, right? So my goal would be as a coach is how can I improve dropout rate to 10th grade? Let's do one more year. Let's get them to stay one more year. And then you can progress and hopefully build it. Now, that might stink for a team with 17 seniors and the junior, but you're building a special program. Mm-hmm. You're building something that has everything to do with everything but the sport. Everything in terms of the culture, in terms of relationships, in terms of praise. How do you want that person to be when they grow up? And so they stayed. Like that's the biggest compliment a coach can have if the crappy kid stays. So,
yeah, no, there's a program in Columbus that they have. I swear every year it's like 13 to 15 seniors that are on the team. Now, obviously they can't all play and they don't all play, but I do think that speaks volumes to the enjoyment factor of that game and that team and that experience, because why would you stick around if you're not playing for 4 years if it wasn't enjoyable to some extent, and I think that you nailed it. And it was such a valuable piece. And I hope the coaches listening heard it, is focus on the positives you see, because I think that's such a huge thing for shifting, not just what their feedback is, but what the kids are experiencing and how much more confident they are that they're not constantly getting redirected on the wrong. They're getting encouraged for the right. And I don't know, that's just such a powerful thing. And I think that really hammers home the positive outlook on how you coach and how you lead people. And when it comes to the fun, I had an interesting thought here. So did you see the video of, I believe it was the Phoenix Suns pregame dancing around, goofing off, just like being loose? I guess the question is how do we help kids find that kind of joy in what they're doing, but still have that focus to go compete? Like, I don't know, maybe because I think a lot of coaches will see that and be like, oh, they're too loose, they're too relaxed, they're not going to play well. But let's be honest, the Suns are pretty darn good this year. They're not a bad basketball team. So they're doing something right. How do we balance that?
Yeah. Well, number one, and see, that's a tough thing because we fight this as coaches. Like, you're talking about a 9th grade kid. Yeah. You're talking about a 10th grade, 11th, 12th. You're talking about a teenager. You're talking about all this stuff. Why can't they be teens? Who says that this is the job, that this is their livelihood? It's not. It's yours, coach. It's your job to be prepared. It's your job to make it so that these kids stay, that they get better. The only way that happens is if trust is there, right? So the coaching staff has trust with Phoenix, right? And so think about it in any terms of, if I'm giving you feedback and we're about to go compete after the feedback, what happens if I give you a praise and a compliment? You're like, yes, all right. Well, now we slap the floor, right? Now we get down in the stance and now we're locked in and focused on this task. If I give you a negative compliment and I say how bad you suck at throwing or whatever it is, and I watch you immediately after, you head down, shoulders slump, or you can see it turning in their head that they don't want to make that mistake again. But all they're thinking about is that mistake again, right? So you automatically know they are not in it for the next possession. But the next possession is what counts the most, not the past one. The next, this, which one's going to win? The kid who's ready to go? Let's get into this stance. Or, I don't want to hear coach do that again. That's what's going to happen. So I really do think like the Suns are playing at a level at which is comfy. It's fun for them. Even the competition, even when they're down 15, they're like, I got your back, Charles. You got mine? Yeah, bet. We're good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the key, is that the joy makes it easier to handle the adversity. It makes it easier to take on the hard stuff. So, Jason, I could talk to you for another 45 minutes or more, but what I want to do is I want to give you a moment here to tell a little bit about what you got going on. Dig into maybe the mountain leadership experience that you have and some of those things that are unique to what you're doing, so that my listeners, if they're curious and getting more information from you, they can reach out and connect a little bit.
Yeah. Well, first off, I do want to go back to your book, number one.
Yeah.
I loved it. Not even back to it. I did write down here, and I want to encourage people to think about this. A, read it, and then B, think about this. On page 99, right? You've got kids playing, your kids are playing with toys and curiosity. And so actually this will feed into what we're trying to do with Mountain Leadership and the Healthy Leader community, but it's a curiosity, right? So, and I love that. I marked it. I love this. And my comment first is to this idea of innovation, right? So the kids are playing with toys, and what they learn, and what I want everybody to be encouraged about it in this curiosity, is that they learn this toy, but they also learn how to use it a different way, right? And that's what the greatest thing about being human is, that we get to try things, invent things, but then the wheel works for something else just a little bit better. This toy isn't a toy. It's amazing at sweeping the cobwebs off the floor. Like, holy heaven, who knew? And so I want to encourage, like, as coaches, we've got to look in other areas and other avenues to go, how could I find a better way to reach and to coach up these kids? And it might be way out of the ballpark in terms of the sport or coaching in general. You know, I think that from a basketball coach could really benefit watching a football coach run a 100-player practice. How does that look? Like, you got to think about managing all these moving parts and how it flows, and how that might make you a better practice planner. So I do think that going outside of the realm, like your book just fired me up with that too.
I appreciate that.
Also the whole reason why we did the Mountain Leadership and why we're doing this Healthy Leader community. it's to bring stuff that's outside of the realm to help serve you on your individual level. I started Mountain Leadership because I got something in my soul when I reached the 14er. Okay, so I climbed the Tetons. That was a 13er. That doesn't even count, right? But there was face climbs. There was all sorts of stuff. And I got to the top and I was like, there were times I couldn't feel my hands. I was one of those dumb guys that didn't read the list of things you had to bring. So I didn't have gloves. And so there's snow water coming down the rock and it's freezing. I can't feel my hands, but I need my hands, right? And so I ended up realizing that we are so much more capable of things that we think we're not able to do. But our body's stronger. Even our mind actually is stronger. We just have to train it in that way, right? And so I wanted people to experience when I climbed my first 14er, I was 0 for 4 on 14ers. I don't like heights, but I'm climbing a mountain. That cost me the mountains. I had vertigo really, really bad for 2 mountains. And for 2 years, I still went to the mountains in hopes that I could get it, but the vertigo kicked in, right? So I missed out on that. When I got my first 14er, it was God speaking to hear, right? And so that's for me. But it might be Allah, it might be whatever it is for a lot of other people, but it's still right here. And so I wanted people to experience that no matter what their struggle is, no matter what their adversity is, no matter what the hurdle is, if you get a taste of getting to the top, what it can do, it now gives you this ability to go, I am unstoppable. I can go achieve greatness. I can do that as long as I keep putting this foot forward, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. And so I'm super passionate about that stuff. Healthy Leader, our goal is just to improve communities, educators. We're here to improve sales leaders. We're here to improve the churches. We're here to improve coaching because we know the power of community and we know what happens within that. And so that's what I'm fired up about, man. I could talk for years, not just hours on that stuff, but I thank you for giving me that time and the platform to do this.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been a real pleasure. I look forward to having more conversations in the future for sure. So thank you so much. As always, guys, keep reaching for the stars, fall flat on your face. But remember, whenever we fall, always get up.
Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. If you haven't yet, please take a minute now to subscribe and review our show. Join us again next week as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But remember, no matter what happens, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast.